Hello, and welcome to the Marketer Interview. My name is Joel Villarini Falbe, and I am the Director of Social Media at Florida International University down in Miami, Florida. Today, I will be talking to Dr. Liz Gross. Dr. Gross is the CEO and founder of Campus Sonar, a higher ed focused marketing firm offering brand and reputation management, institutional and presidential strategy, as well as enrollment targeting and positioning. I hope you enjoy the interview. We're going to be discussing questions about the state of marketing and then transition on to higher education marketing. Thank you, Liz, for taking this interview. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joel.
How are you? Doing good?
Yeah, doing great. Got my big old cup of deliciousness here.
And I must note, we're talking before interviewing, and that cup has tweets embedded on them.
And actually, they are tweets about higher ed marketing. I didn't tell
know,
you.
it's a case. I can see, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right, so let's do this. First question, a very hot topic now. How are emerging AI technologies impacting your role or company?
So I have to chuckle. The first thing is that everybody asks me about them. So I suddenly have to have a soundbite about AI technologies. I want to talk about pre-chat GPT first. So we've had some AI embedded in some of the tools that we use to do our business for a long time. For folks who don't know, the business of Campus Sonar is based on social listening intelligence for colleges and universities, and then translating that to actionable insights. So we use social listening software. We use CRM that kind of pulls it all together for our relationships with our clients. And both of those have AI embedded in them. In the social listening tool, I would say that it's been varying levels of useful impact. There are some things that are nice, and that, like, when there's a change in data where you see a spike in volume or sentiment or something like that, it can at least AI will point you to the likely cause of it, which you can then investigate and figure out your context, which is nice.
Or context.
Yes, but what I don't like in the tools, and they've been working on this for a long time, is AI-driven query writing, where you just type in your topic and then it matches it to Wikipedia and it quick writes you a query. And a lot of our analysts have matched that up in comparison to when we would write a query, knowing what we know about the industry and the brand or the topic that we're looking at. And the relevancy of the AI-driven queries right now are like less than 50% for us. So we're not a big fan of that. The other tool that we use that has some AI components in it is HubSpot, as a CRM. And they've got more, I haven't used their advanced AI stuff that they just rolled out recently, but they have some really nice little embedded AI in terms of when you connect your inbox to the tool, it will pull people's phone numbers out of it and automatically put it in the right field. And stuff like that really is literally just replacing me copying and pasting something. Is really nice and helpful and appreciative. So I'm thinking about the tools we use with varying success. It's also impacting our company in a couple of different ways. I know our client services team is thinking about how we can use some of these third-party AI tools to replace some of that copying and pasting or searching and finding, because when you're doing really good social listening queries and segmentation, there's a lot of searching and finding to put into a query, and we still want to build our queries, but AI could help us build parts of it. That would make sense. And the other interesting thing impacting our company is we've already had a conversation with at least one client who is, or sorry, a prospect. They're not a client.
They will be a client.
There will be a client, future client, who is currently kind of struggling to use social listening software in a way that works for them. And in a fit of kind of like frustration or desperation, maybe, is using Chat GPT to try and write a social listening query. And I've tried to do that. It doesn't work. It is very bad. But what really gets me is that, and we might come back to this later in our conversation, but I see people thinking that they can replace expertise with AI. And that doesn't work in my book. So that's an interesting conversation to have.
And I feel the expertise is what drives to driving those prompts.
Right. I
Yeah.
agree with a lot of the folks who are saying you need to get good at writing an AI prompt, just
Mhm.
like writing a good Google search
Yeah.
is a skill. And like that's something I know I need to learn better.
Hmm.
But it can be like a brainstorm partner, an idea generator,
Yes. Yes.
a example provider, but it's not going to replace critical thinking in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion.
Yeah. And to add to your answer from my perspective, one thing AI has a lot to catch up with is languages other than English.
Mm,
I've used AI in Spanish. It's okay, but it's not the same level that you get in English. And also, going to social listening tools should already have, everyone should have the ability to just write a query and not have to write it in Boolean.
but they
Because,
don't.
yeah, but they don't. And yeah, Boolean adds a level of context that AI tools have yet to get there. So yeah, that's a whole other conversation, but very valid point. All right, let's
With
move.
social listening, one of
Yeah.
the things I like to joke about internally with my team is like, would AI even know how to write a query about AI? Would it know the difference between AI as artificial intelligence, AI as artificial insemination?
Hmm. And I think,
Would we be looking at conversation about livestock
yeah,
versus
I see
technology?
ourselves getting there very much sooner than later. The way things are developing, I think we're going to get there. A few months, a year tops. All right, so let's move to our second question. On a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being not worried, 5 being most worried, how concerned are consumers with privacy? And why did you choose that number?
So I think I would say consumers are going to be on a 2. So just a little bit more than not worried.
Mhm.
Um, I choose that number because in my household, we talk about this all the time because my partner works in cybersecurity
Mhm.
and does a lot of work in privacy and compliance. So I know how bad it is. And I know how relatively little the average consumer knows about that. So I picked the 2 because I don't think most consumers understand how much of their privacy has already been breached,
Mhm.
and a variety of things that they're using, and what the potential for a breach might be. So a lot of it is just lack of awareness or true understanding of how it's going to impact them as an individual.
That's a great answer. And I recently wrote an article on my blog about privacy, and I'm guilty. I got 5 speakers, smart speakers in my home. I'm deeply embedded in the Google ecosystem. So it's like, yeah. I have a colleague from Puerto Rico that says that privacy is a luxury in the 21st century. And I think it is. I think it's more of an illusion. So let's see
It
where this goes.
and it literally it costs more money to ensure your privacy than not. I think about a decision we recently made at our home. So I work with an information security, or I live with an information security professional. I run a company focused on technology, and I was finally talked into installing a video doorbell
Mhm.
this year. Uh, but I put my foot down and demanded that that video not be stored on or shared with the cloud in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
I hate that idea for myself, for anyone who might visit our home. And it's hundreds of dollars extra plus some home networking know-how to set that up and not have it go to the cloud.
And to keep it be local.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. If I was a visitor to your house, I'd be really appreciative of your efforts. Most
We're
people will
trying
not
really
know.
hard.
So thank you on behalf of most of them. All right. So another question. Do you value marketing certifications such as those for like Google Ads, HubSpot, Facebook Blueprint, Hootsuite?
So I value them in terms of a reflection of someone's willingness to learn. So I don't necessarily assume, and the one I'm most familiar with is HubSpot because we use HubSpot so much in our business that I actually, as part of our onboarding, ask many of our team members to get some of the initial
Mhm.
certifications from HubSpot. So I value it knowing that it means that people took the time to go through that training material and learn it. I don't assume that any of those certifications equals a certain level of competence with the tool or the subject matter.
Fair
Because
enough.
I think you can pass the tests for a lot of those things without necessarily doing the thing, but it does show some motivation and willingness to learn, for sure.
Okay, great answer. All right, what are your thoughts on the growing importance of social responsibility and sustainability in marketing strategies?
So I have a lot of thoughts on social responsibility, less on sustainability, potentially just because of the industries that I've been working in.
Mhm.
So I don't think I'm qualified to speak on the second part, but in terms of social responsibility, I think if we think about, and I'm going to speak very US centric because that's the market that I operate
Of
in.
course.
The the demographics of the United States are changing so much, not just with younger generations, but particularly with younger generations, that I heard a really, really good talk recently from the Loyola Marymount University president, Tim Snyder. He calls Gen Z the solidarity generation, and that they're the generation that is willing to stand up for causes. You know, it's the David Hoggs and such of the generation. I think that when I think of social responsibility, I think about caring for all humans and valuing all humans. And I think the United States as a country, particularly the group that has the most buying power moving forward, the younger to middle-aged consumers, they're going to demand that brands have respect and show value for all aspects of the people who are living in our society. And our society is getting less white, more outwardly queer. Like, these are all things that you can quantify in our society. And showing social responsibility or a commitment to social justice is something that people want to know about the institutions, organizations, and brands that they work with. So to the extent that that is a true reflection of that brand or organization's values, I think it's really important to not only make statements through marketing strategies and how you do things, but also consider things like implicit bias in marketing strategies. Consider ways that we market and position products in ways that, knowingly or not, are aligned with structures that are built on systemic racism and white supremacy, and really like interrogate that, because today's consumers, and I know we're going to talk about higher ed in a little bit, particularly those who are going into college, are thinking about that and want to know that the folks that they support with their dollars are thinking about that. So I think it's important because it's important to the people that are going to ultimately be buying the product that is being marketed. It also makes our society a little bit more polarizing, which is just a fact of life. And I'm willing to live that life.
There you go. All right. So next question, in a resume, what skills or traits would you like to see more or less of?
So on a resume, it's not even really a skill or trait. Like, this is a trait of a resume. I would like to see more results or outcomes, because my style of interviewing is always, what were you hired to do? And did that happen? So like, what actually was achieved in the roles that you had? Which some folks are really good at that, and some jobs that they've had are more aligned with that than not. So that's really important to me. The other thing that is really important to me is someone's skills in relationship building, and that is very rarely highlighted on a resume. I'll usually get to that in like a second stage interview with somebody. And for a lot of roles in a lot of companies, but particularly in any sort of consulting or marketing, when you're working with human data, like that relationship building aspect is really important and really transferable. And I want to know how people have worked not only with people like them or their peers in an organization, but how they've mentored others or how they've worked with folks who are in leadership positions above them. That is really important to me. And I don't see a lot of that on resumes.
On a
I think the other
similar,
extension of that is like industry or professional involvement too. Like, how are you
yes,
sharing your own knowledge?
yes, on a similar line of thought, often, like, being a social media director, I get to hire social media managers and specialists. And one thing I look on the resume, I'm like, how are you selling yourself? If you can't sell yourself, how are you going to sell me? So if I see a resume that's like a bland word template, I'm like, you're not putting thought into this.
Mhm.
So I really look sometimes for a little bit of statics. How are you ordering your lines? How is everything? Results. So very often I look at like, how are you selling yourself? And by that also, how are you building those relationships that you just mentioned? So yeah,
Yeah.
very similar. Brandon, bonus question as we move away from marketing in general. Headshots and resumes, yes or no?
I really don't care. It's not
Really?
going to sway me one way or another. Whatever feels good to you.
Yeah, no, because I often, when I see younger resumes specifically, and it's always women, they will sometimes include a photo. And I just wondering, maybe I'm more old school on that behalf. I'm like, okay. So I tried not to create any bias, but in the end, you're like, hmm, I don't know. So I
If
just
you pique
find,
my interest, I'm going to go to your LinkedIn anyway, so I'm
yeah,
probably going to see your headshot
yeah,
regardless.
there you
So
go.
it really doesn't bother
There
me.
you go. All right, so let's move to higher ed marketing questions. What challenges do you see in higher ed marketing confronting in the short term, next 3 years or long term?
Honestly, I think the biggest challenge in the short term is related to people. So leadership, good, solid marketing leadership, as well as institutional leadership that values that expertise, that is empowered to actually do marketing uh, to meet the goals of the institution versus just put out fires or be a communications mouthpiece. And leadership that is consistent enough to be able to make progress at the institution. I think if you look across higher ed marketing right now, there's a lot of folks who've been in the role, like the chief marketer role, whether it's called that or not.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of institutions that have had the same person in that role for 10 plus years, and they might be running a shop that looks very similar to what they were running 10 plus years ago.
Mhm.
And that's a challenge. Not all of them are, but that's a challenge. It's not that different of a challenge from a place that has a rotating revolving door of marketing leaders every 1 to 2 years and can't keep a consistent strategy in place. But alongside the leadership challenge, there's the staffing challenge. If higher ed marketers want to perform using timely, proven strategies, they need a talented team that looks very different from the university relations teams that most people built 15, 20 years ago. And they are not just competing with other higher ed marketers. They are competing not just with the industry and the agencies that serve them, although they're also competing there too. They are competing with every other organization that has a marketing role in it. And it has been very, very hard for higher ed marketers to hire and retain staff who are qualified to do the work that needs to be done today. I've spoken with plenty of chief marketing officers that report 30, 40, 50, 60% vacancies on their teams right now. And that's a huge challenge to make progress and get anything done. Add on to that most higher ed marketing shops are not allowing fully remote employment. That's another thing that makes them less competitive in the marketplace. And some of them are not paying competitive wages for a similar job that would be, at just another company down the street. So that all of that is a challenge in the short term. In the longer term, I actually think the biggest challenge to higher ed marketers is a product market fit issue. Our universities, not all of them, but many universities in the United States, again, my frame of reference, were built to serve a population of wealthy white men 100 plus years ago.
Mhm.
And so many of their structures are built on assumptions that come from that as a core audience. And that is nothing like what the current under 18 population looks like today in the United States. Never mind the need to recruit international students and all those sorts of things. So like the way universities serve students needs to change. And if that doesn't happen, I don't know that any marketing is going to work for a lot of institutions. So the way organizations in higher education offer their services, deliver their services, provide support, and just show up in the marketplace, I really believe needs to change drastically over the next 10 to 15 years. And if not, you can't market your way out of that unless you're one of the prestige brands that is catering to the same audience that it was 150 years ago.
Really interesting thoughts on the topic. Really, really interesting. Okay, so do you feel, and moving to the next question, do you feel higher ed is ready to embrace AI, or will AI force acceptance through disruption?
So this is a crystal ball that I feel is a little murky for me. Right now, before we hit record, I told you that when we talked about AI, I was probably going to use the word curmudgeon.
Yeah.
I think I'm a bit of a curmudgeon with AI because, and I think I know where that stems from. I think it's because I see people wanting to use AI as a crutch, or as we mentioned before, as a replacement for actual expertise. So AE, actual expertise versus AI. So my fear is that we would use AI as a crutch to replace or fix our problems with staffing, our problems with needing to change the product to fit the market, instead of continuing to cultivate humans with critical thinking skills, which is terrifying because like that's why we exist as an industry, is to cultivate humans with critical thinking skills. So I think higher ed will be slow to adopt AI in ways that meaningfully impact its operations. But there are plenty of ways it could and should be, particularly when you think about like the administrative functions of a university, where we've literally been paying people to push papers around a lot. Like there's probably some use for AI there that could be used to change some of our cost structures. And I know there will be some departments and faculty that are really ready to embrace AI in the classroom and what that looks like. But I think it's going to be more of a force over time in the ways that make the most sense for the institution. They're in no way similar, but it makes me think about how higher ed first responded to social media. And it was very, very fear-based. As part of my dissertation, I actually had to go back through the professional literature of like our associations and journals and look in like 2007, 2008, 2009, what were they saying about social media? And it was all fear and how it was so dangerous and was going to ruin everything. And now there's offices dedicated to using it as part of the educational experience at universities coming up on 15 years later, right? So we're just at the beginning of that adoption curve, and higher ed is very rarely an early adopter.
True. Very true.
Yeah, caveat that I'm a curmudgeon when it comes to AI.
And I see it more like it's gonna force its way in it, and students right now are the ones leading that charge, and then universities are reacting to it because they don't have a choice at some point. That's why I feel it's gonna be an interesting journey in the next couple of years to see how that evolves. So thank you. And then what type of university is actually, oh, sorry. What marketing tactics should universities integrate or phase out?
I love this question. So I've been saying for years, and again, I never worked in admissions. I applied for multiple jobs in admissions as a younger professional and was never hired. But as a marketer and a higher ed leader, I really, really, really think institutions should phase out faster the spray and pray approach to student search and relying on tests or third parties to create leads for an institution. Other than the fact that there's a lot of inequities in where a lot of those leads are generated. I don't think it reflects a lot of consumer behavior these days, and it's likely not the best return on investment for many institutions. It's been a tactic that a lot have used to just jack up their application rates so that they can claim more selectivity, and that's not actually helping them with their mission very much. So that's the big thing that I think should be phased out. Integrated, probably unsurprisingly, given my business, I think that universities should use more audience intelligence regularly in how they are creating their marketing strategies as well as assessing their marketing strategies. So Campus Sonar supports that through social intelligence from social listening research, but there's a lot of ways that that can be part of an ongoing audience intelligence program. There is not a strong market insights function at most institutions, and that's an area where higher ed is sorely behind, and where I think, if anything, we should have been investing more in over the last 20 years. Because if you're a university that is focused largely on the traditional age student, you have to know about that buyer more earlier than many consumer focused companies do, because you're looking at them before they even have a full-time job, and you have to understand how they're making their choices. So more audience intelligence, whether that's social listening or additional market research or whatever that might be. I also believe as a counterpoint to taking out the spray and pray student search approach, that colleges and universities would be well served to look at more inbound marketing techniques. Again, reflecting the behaviors of today's consumers, not just Gen Z, also the adult learners who have more Google search or word of mouth based behavior than respond to an ad behavior. I think it's more important that universities think about, are they talking about themselves in ways and in places that is going to hit the radar of folks who are looking and interested in them, and then combining that with partnership marketing or influencer marketing, because that word of mouth and third party recognition, or what is the word I'm looking for? Too early in the morning without my coffee. Third party endorsement. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. Okay.
Third party endorsement of an experience or a place or a product, even if it's a degree or a teacher or something like that, is really important to a lot of consumers. Not just Gen Z. We've known that for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see institutions investing more in learning about their audience and engaging with their audience to really push that out there. And then also the content that can be found and trusted by those of us who are looking for, an educational solution at 10 o'clock at night in the dark on our laptop or our phone or whatever. Like, they need to show up there. And the way a lot of universities are approaching content marketing, if they are at all, is not reflective of that.
Great. So going back to what you said about social intelligence, it's a huge tool that many people are not leveraging. And if they did, they'd be able to craft more relevant messages and drive much more attention. The tools are there. It's just like the lack of investment on the tools and on the people with the expertise to use it is what's not driving that usage as it should be. And I'll just share a really quick pet peeve. Back when I used to work in Puerto Rico at a university called Ana G. Mendez, a lot of the marketing came from TV and radio, and they always ended with enroll now, apply now, and they drove that to digital. I'm like, no, people don't make that decision on a click. Let's find some other call to action, but then it drove me crazy. Enroll now, do it now, come to us. It's like, simmer down. This is a large petition. You don't make it just because you put it in a CTA. So anyway, just sharing that pet peeve. Okay, what type of university is best positioned to leverage emerging marketing technologies? Large, small, public? What are your thoughts?
So I'm gonna return to the type, I think, as I close up this answer. But to start, I don't necessarily think it's dependent on the type of university. I think it's the type of leader. And here I'm talking about the president or the chancellor or whoever at that institution. We need leaders who are willing to change business models and operate differently than they have in the past. We need leaders who are not only willing to elevate marketing as a cabinet level position, because it still isn't on a lot of campuses, but to then trust that person to do the actual work of marketing, not just promotion and not just communication. So I think there are certain types of leaders, some of whom will come out of higher education, some of whom will come from industry, that will position an institution to leverage emerging marketing technologies better. The other thing that leader needs to do is fund marketing. Like, it needs a budget beyond people. You can't leverage emerging marketing technologies if you don't have a MarTech budget. And a lot of institutions either don't have one or have a really sad MarTech budget. I also think that this organization that is best positioned to leverage these emerging marketing technologies would be one that has some sort of good collaborative relationship between marketing and enrollment, because driving enrollment and retention is related to but different from creating brand awareness and trust. And folks need to be focused on both of those things, whether they're in the same shop or a separate shop. There has to be a good collaborative relationship there. And then when we get back to type of institution, I do think privates have a little bit of a leg up here, because they have fewer, but not an absence of, political concerns in the way that higher ed is operating right now. And I actually think, if we go back to the role of social responsibility in marketing and how I feel that universities need to change, I think that politics will play a role in universities' ability to market themselves in a way that resonates with the demographics of the future learners in the United States. So privates might have a leg up on that a little bit.
Okay, thank you. All right, so last question. Is it advantageous that enrollment marketing to be embedded in central marketing or communications, or does it work better separately?
Yeah, I don't think it's an either or. I think it can work well both ways. It's about the relationship, it's about the strategy of the overall institution and how those work together. I think that there does need to be, like I just mentioned, responsibility for brand building and trust and institutional communication, and responsibility for demand generation and what's essentially like customer acquisition, right? Like, dare we say the C word when we talk about higher education?
It is.
These two are really important, and they can operate together or separate as long as the leadership is aligned. So I think that's going to vary based on size of institution, the marketing and enrollment strategies that they decide to deploy. I don't think budgets, how those are allocated. I don't think it's necessarily one is better than the other.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your answer. Those are all the questions. I really appreciate
a fun morning.
your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Anything else you want to add to wrap it up?
If anyone made it this far and they want to chat some more, I'm a very online person. So you can either find me on Twitter at LizGross144 or on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn almost every single day. Or if you want to see how my company approaches marketing, that's Campus Sonar, and we're at campussonar.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you so much for watching the Marketer Interview. Please follow Dr. Gross, Campus Sonar, and myself on the following social media channels, or leave your comments below. Thank you for watching.